All right, I think we're ready to get started here. Thank you everyone for joining today. We're going to be talking about human resources on Jira Service Management. First, we're going to tell you a little bit more about who we are, because we're going to be doing the majority of the talking here. Then we're going to dive in specifically to how HR departments and teams can leverage JSM. We'll talk a little bit more about the services that Flight Crew offers, and yeah, that's what we're going to accomplish today. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. We're going to monitor the chat and the Q&A, so feel free to throw questions in there. And we'll also be available after the call to answer any questions that you might have. So today's areas of focus are around JSM specifically, obviously. The three key takeaways that we hope you leave with today is that JSM is a great tool for managing cases and workflows for HR departments. It's quick to implement and easy to maintain and scale. So that's what we're going to be focused on today. Just a point of order, we will also be doing these webinars every month. So next week, we will be doing ITSM best practices in JSM on Thursday, August 18th. That being said, a little bit about us. My name's Dave Hansen. I've been in the service management space for just about 13 years now. I'm starting at ServiceNow, but working with SAP, AI agent automation, and then spending the past year exclusively with Jira Service Management. So a lot to talk about, a lot to be excited about, and that's me in a nutshell.
And hi, everyone. I'm Paul. Similar to Dave, I've been in the service management space since about 2012. I've been on both the pre-sale side from an overall solutioning perspective, doing demonstrations of service management, but more importantly on the implementation side. So running workshops, talking about best practices for how to approach service management, how it is involved with human resources, as well as other teams in organizations. And I'll be walking through the demonstration aspect of today and talking about a lot about what we hear from HR teams and some of our experience over those last 12, 13 years or so.
So when we talk about Flight Crew holistically, we've been doing service management for a while across a wide group of teams. We're going to stay focused on the employees' experience today and their experience with service management tools and tooling, particularly as it relates to HR onboarding, transitions, and offboarding, case management, request management, and all of the necessary integrations that go into making sure it cleanly fits into your existing tech stack. So just to talk a little bit more, again, we've been doing service management for a while and JSM specifically for the past year and change. Really want to talk about why that is, and really where the experience starts is really with employees, right? So they're going to have a variety of issues across a variety of different departments. The ability for JSM from a user perspective is to be able to simplify that whole process for where the user goes to find help, right? It shouldn't matter what tool that they engage with on the front end, whether that's through something like Slack or Teams, through an end user portal, through existing email and phone call channels. Really, the power of JSM is being able to streamline that on the back end and make sure that all of the different issues and requests are routed to the right team. So I'll turn it over to Paul to talk about why that is, but that's really where the front end of the experience gets streamlined from an end user perspective.
Thanks, David. And from a technical perspective, we'll see a lot of this in the tool if you haven't seen Jira Service Management before. But where this all comes into play is those workspaces that we talk through. So really, you have a common framework, which is that teamwork graph, really at being an intelligent data store for how your data should be organized in the system. This is where you start to see benefits over managing things in a shared inbox, using a shared spreadsheet, using tools that maybe it's very specific for a certain use case, but it's hard to have visibility into everything and see what's going on. So that's really where it comes into play from a technical perspective and how the system is architected. And that gives you the benefit of easy integrations. We'll talk through some common ones that we typically see and ones I've personally done before, but that's where your Workday comes into play. That's where Bamboo HR, your onboarding systems that you may have. How do we pull it all together? And
So, Paul, you had a quick comment come in. Audio is a little bit chippy. I think it sounds okay for me. We might want to just do a quick audio check.
okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I believe that was Dan that asked that question. Dan, throw in the chat if that sounds better. If it doesn't sound better, then we'll make an adjustment.
Yeah, okay. Everything looks okay from what I could see, but I'll keep going, and then we'll see. I could try
Sure.
switching to another mic. So where this comes into play as well is the how it all fits in with a system like this. So again, when you're tying in all these different systems and environments, a lot of times I get asked, what does service management mean in terms of HR, in terms of other teams? But really, it's being able to look at how do the teams best communicate, what again is involved in the actual processes that get set up, and we'll talk through all of those aspects today.
We might want to do a mic swap, I think, according.
Okay.
Yeah. So while he's doing that mic swap, I'll talk a little bit more about the the teamwork graph and what that means, right? So at the end of the day, there's a lot of tools out there that can handle parts of the service management experience, right? So if you're going to go with most off-the-shelf ticketing tools, they can handle a piece of it, but it's going to be a siloed approach to that problem, right? So that one team, it'll get set up correctly for that one team, whether it's HR or a common one is IT as well. It might be good for that, but in terms of the user experience, it'll replace a shared inbox, but the user is still going to have the same siloed experience when it comes to finding issues or getting their issues resolved. So I'll use payroll as a quick example. Payroll is one of those problems that, hey, if your paycheck's wrong, it's it's important to go get fixed. But in terms of who handles it at the shared services level, it's not always clear, right? Usually, folks will gravitate towards HR because that's where a lot of the initial paperwork happens, but payroll can also be handled by finance. So if an issue gets submitted to HR in this siloed structure, they're going to have trouble either transferring it or getting status on it because it's not going to the right team, right? The end user submitted to HR, but really at the end of the day, it's a finance problem. So either the HR analyst that's handling it at the base level is either going to close them out and a lot of times not give folks direction because they don't themselves know where to go, or they'll try to point them in the right direction, but it's still a fragmented experience. So with JSM, you kind of take all of that complexity and eliminate it for the end user, right? The end user just needs to know where to go for help, and then with JSM, we can go move it through to the right place, specifically because of the teamwork graph.
Correct. And a big piece to this, and Dave, I'll let you tell me if this is any better,
Sounds
is
better.
okay, great. We'll go with that. A big piece of this is, again, knowing where to go. I know in places I've worked in the past and organizations I've worked with on how to set up service management, the service management layer is that layer of engagement. Who do I go to? Where do I need to talk to? I know there's 3 different portals that are out there. This is really the one place, the one-stop shop that you can go to in order to have it float to the right person. You need to know on the back end where the request goes, but like Dave said, your end user really doesn't, and that shouldn't be something that they have to worry about. Awesome. So talk a little bit about where HR fits in the JSM world. I'll jump into the tool and walk through common use cases, what we see, and go through a demo. Again, if you have questions as we're going throughout this, Dave's watching the chat and he'll jump in and ask them. So really from a typical desired outcomes perspective, when I'm talking with HR groups, their first need is always, I want to be able to track all the requests from my employees in a single location. Um, a lot of times we see, you'll keep hearing us say shared inboxes. I have an HR at mycompany.com, and we want to be able to take that and put it somewhere where we can actually track the request, get more visibility from the team. We don't know who's working on what, um, and being able to manage that in one single place is definitely necessary. That's also helping with not only who's working on it now, what are the priorities of these requests? That's very hard to manage in a manual process, shared inbox, or even some other tools out there that aren't built with a service management framework in mind. And all of this also really ties into, yeah, this is important for requests. I have a question on benefits or on my paycheck, but the biggest cost savings when doing something like this and leveraging JSM is typically improving the onboarding or offboarding experience. So that's always the biggest use case that we're handling. How do we handle the entire process from we have a new hire who's going to join the team? There's a lot of moving pieces to that typically. You have the HR group who is, of course, handling the majority of that, but you need IT to be able to provision their laptop. Facilities maybe needs to give them a place to sit in the building. So we'll look at some of these examples, but onboarding and offboarding is always a very large piece of why a service management system makes sense. And a typical HCM, your human capital management, your HRIS, your HR information system, doesn't always have workflows or processes to handle that. So we'll just jump right in and take a live look at the system. So if you haven't seen Jira Service Management before, it is a cloud-based tool. And most importantly, it is true SaaS. It's true software as a service. So you're able to get the benefit of having the foundation of the house for what this system should do when it comes to service management. How do I handle requests? How do I leverage automation? How do I handle these integrations or the tie-ins between all of these different areas and processes? So in the system itself, it is role-based. So based on who I am in the organization, can determine the level of access that I have, and everything can really be locked down, which is very important when it comes to the human resources world. There could be sensitive topics or conversations, and you want to be able to lock that down. So really what we're looking at here is the heart of Jira Service Management, JSM, is having multiple projects here. These are different teams who are leveraging the system, and they get their own piece of the environment to be able to leverage with a common framework. So you'll see a little bit more of this as we're diving into it. But the benefit here is these teams are working together, although they're working separately. So the HR queue that we're going to take a look at is cut off from facilities. You don't want them to be able to see it unless maybe they're working on a specific task, like again, setting something up for a new hire. You have the capability to provide access to certain users who need it, different teams, moving them around, but in the back end of the system, have them all connected to really help with reporting and automations throughout the process. So, too many screens here. When we're looking at these projects, these teams, JSM is built with, again, that best practice framework in mind. So here's how an HR group would typically leverage JSM. So if you were to actually create a project here, and if I were to look at service management, these are all templates that you can take advantage of to help get a quick start in taking advantage of JSM without needing to do a whole lot from a configuration or stand-up perspective. And I'll talk at the end about how Flight Crew assists with these engagements and where we provide value in standing up a tool like JSM, but you really can start using it rather quickly. And these projects that we assist with in standing it up are really a matter of weeks, if not sometimes days, as opposed to months and years when, kind of non-agile systems might be being leveraged. But if I were to take a look at what does the HR service management template actually look like, this provides a common set of requests of, hey, HR teams typically are hearing about, I want a request for leave. I have a kind of generic question. I need to set up payroll. I need to offboard or onboard an employee. So just by using this template, you'll be able to take advantage of all of these, but of course, everything is configurable. If I were to actually build out one of these templates just as a test for now for the HR team, we can see the different templates that are provided, right? So of course you get the overall project itself. Here's what HR is going to leverage, but then we can start to further define what are these templates that we want. So not only is it, hey, most people want to ask for help with new employee onboarding, but what does that request actually look like? And you can see the template that you'll start with, but again, we can configure this, and that's what we're going to get into. So taking a look at our human resources queue here, reporting and dashboards are a core part of Jira Service Management. And what this is actually the most common requests that we typically hear about or that are being asked for that might be hard to get today. But just on this summary screen for my human resources team, queue, whatever it may be, I want to understand how we're doing from a customer satisfaction perspective. Built into JSM is when a request is over, send out a 5-star, hey, how did we do? The user could just click it and we get that information to help understand where we at from a customer sat perspective. I can also see different types of requests from a type perspective, but also from a team workload perspective, start to get a better idea of are 1 or 2 individuals overwhelmed? Do we need to be able to shift the workload a little bit, or can we use AI to help lessen the workload? We'll talk about that. But also more graphs and reports that you would expect, like what's the breakdown of the current priorities that we're working on, any recent activity, and all of this can be filtered down based on the types of requests, who it's assigned to the priority, to get a better idea and snapshot of everything in here. Now, reports are configurable, and we can get into the more specifics around that, but this is a good common framework of the types of information folks are usually looking for when, hey, I'm tracking my requests in the system. How can I slice and dice the data? So back to the security and the setup of the system being role-based, we are able to, again, break this down for, hey, we have the entire HR team. They should see all of these requests. Or perhaps we have a sub-team for benefits or payroll. The system can be defined for those types of requests should automatically get directed to that team, or perhaps based on where a user's located, if you have different support structures based on location, like geography, or maybe based on someone's department. All of that's configurable, and it's really all about making work flow to the right person the first time and helping eliminate that initial workload of, hey, there's 100 things we need to work on. Who's the team who should be working on it? How do we divvy that up? All that logic is really built in. So when we look at here, a list of example requests that the team is working on, we have questions for HR. We have onboarding that we'll look at as an example. All of these request types are, as I mentioned, configurable, as well as the questions that you want to collect. And we will also take a look at the form that users can submit. Because from a how do your employees actually contact you? How do they request assistance? Where can they go? You can set up an email. If you have one today, that's the HR at my company. The benefit is you could keep that email, but instead now it'll direct into JSM, so you can manage this much better than just, again, that shared inbox. But you can also have a portal. So have a actual URL where employees visit to be able to submit different requests, but also see requests they've already submitted. And that really helps with, hey, where are we at with this request I'm working on, or I'm waiting on my benefits change. When is that going to happen? You'll see more of that flow as we get into that section, but it really is built for how can I lessen the questions coming in of just, hey, where are we at with this? The phone calls, give them access to self-service to be able to see that on their own. There's also the capability for interacting with your team with AI sitting in front. So from a virtual agent perspective, and then as well as if you want to add a widget to a website you already have, there's a lot of different options for how users should request support. So let's actually take a look at the end user side of things as on a portal, as an example. So HR has its own portal. I can create as many of these as we might need. Again, if you wanted a separate one for payroll or benefits, you have control over that. But it's really simple for, what am I here for? Do I need to go to Workday for something specific? Can I watch a video on how to leverage the system? We can post helpful topics and information for users. But the other key piece to this is that one-stop shop. So we can, through automation and integrations, have requests like, I want to update my address because I moved. It could be handled in JSM, and then the integration can go to whatever your HCM system is and make the change automatically. So now the address is updated and that's all automated. That's one of the most common use cases we have for integrations is with Workday. I mentioned Bamboo HR, different onboarding systems. But you can also have, hey, we have this other system over here that for this one type of request, you still need to go there and do. So you can easily have links here. But again, this is that one-stop shop I'm going to. So even if I have to go to another system, you can direct them properly based on them visiting JSM first. So if I were to take a look at what can I contact HR about, there's a few different examples. Maybe I want to put in for leave. This is where the fields are configurable. And the same with from an employee perspective. Hey, I want to onboard an employee. What I see in this list is also based on who I am in the organization. So based on my role, can also determine what types of requests I'm able to see and submit. So if I'm a hiring manager, again, a very common example of onboarding would be, how do I start that process? Where does it begin? So this can be a form that I fill out as a hiring manager. This can also initiate from a trigger from another system. So those are, again, two common use cases, and the flight crew experience is understanding the systems that you have involved and knowing what makes sense for, hey, do you want to start on the form? Do you want to leverage a tool that you already have to initiate the process and then you finish it in JSM? Those are all parts of the working sessions and conversations we have with what's the best practice setup for you. But if you had an employee starting, you could see some examples here of, they know they're going to be located in America. So if you have different regions, and then that can dynamically update. All right, so are they going to be in the Boston office? And if so, what type of employee is this? Are they full-time? What department are they in? And now based on the department, if they're in sales, these are the roles that are standard, or perhaps they're actually in manufacturing, and so they're going to have different roles that are available. So all these forms are dynamic, which is really important to not overwhelm the user. And we could also hide and show fields as needed. throughout the form filling process. Now, this is one example of a form, and I mentioned, this is configurable. So another example here is same information. We can have it lay out differently, but something to call out is always what does this new employee need? So when we think about HR and best practices for onboarding, I've worked with customers in the past who have had a concept of, hey, here's this new employee, Dave, and what other employee should we clone his access based on, or what that user needs from equipment, or what they have perspective, and then you list out, oh yeah, clone Mary, because it's a very similar role to Mary. It's really not a good practice in that scenario. You want to have standards defined for this is what this role gets. This is what's involved in who this user is based on their title and their role. Because in the cloning scenario, you can have, well, Mary she's in finance now, but before she was in IT, and she actually had access to all these systems that didn't go away when she moved over. So now this new hire is getting all this access, or this equipment, or these additional items that they don't need, just based on cloning aspects. So really what that comes down to is having standards defined. Yes, I just need something standard for the role, but actually this person does need something a little different. So what does that mean? And I can choose different systems, different levels of access, different laptop badges, whatever it may be in your process. It could be dynamic, and you could define that. So once this is submitted, we will take a look at the example as an actual HR team member, as an agent, for how we'd go about submitting this process. But the last piece to highlight is also this chat with a virtual service agent. You get a lot with JSM in terms of AI and assistance in user experience, but also how can we be more efficient. So just as an example, in JSM, we have these forms and fields, but maybe sometimes the user gets confused, and I don't know where to go to actually request help. So by chatting with the virtual agent, I could ask, how do I update my benefits? And this will automatically generate a response for, hey, to update your benefits, you just go through Fidelity. Here's how you get there. Or if it's a form that's in JSM, that'll just appear here. So this can guide the user based on where they need to go. But again, this is the single place I'm visiting as an employee, and I can get the answer that I need. I could always talk more about virtual agent and where that comes into play. The benefit of having everything in one location is you also have your knowledge base. So here are self-help articles. Here's information that you need to know. Company policies, procedures, all of that could be defined in JSM, and it can be leveraged in something like a virtual service agent, or as well as a typical, hey, I just want to search for information on benefits or changing something, whatever it may be. That, of course, is also available to users from the portal perspective. So if we were to jump back to the queue as an actual agent, we can take a look at just one example here, maybe a question on benefits. So as Emma, she's a question from Cassie at the B. When do I get to reelect benefits with a family edition? So again, virtual service agent can answer this for her, but if this gets assigned to Mitch, hey, yeah, this is the answer to your question. What we can see here is all the information you need is in one place as an agent. So, okay, get me information about the user. So Emma is based in EMEA. She's on the research and development team. She's a full-time employee. I can get her manager. All of this information is available to you because of the teamwork graph, because of leveraging JSM as opposed to spreadsheet or some other system. It's all here. And I'll show you the actual logic of this and how this works at a high level. But all of these relationships are really key with reporting and automation, everything that you could do with these requests. So when I'm looking at a user's question, I can also use AI again. If there's many comments back and forth and this gets reassigned to me, I need to help out, jump in. I could just say, go ahead and summarize the comments for me. And this could say Cassie's asking about reelecting benefits and Mitch explained when this could be done. So a lot of time saving activities can be accomplished with AI, and that's just one example here, as well as are there similar requests? Have we dealt with this issue before? And if so, link to it. Let me see it. Let me leverage it. Let me create an article based on it for additional help. And all of that is just part of what you get with JSM. You'll also notice, in addition to the description here, is this HR sensitive. So back to the role-based setup, only HR should be able to see this. That's a given. If there are certain topics or items that are more sensitive than others, this can be restricted further. So now the only people who could see the content of this is the assignee and the reporter, and that's it. We could configure this further, but again, if there's items you're talking about, perhaps pay or benefits and beneficiary information, that's all items that you could further control. Now, if you're new to JSM or if you've used a system, another system out there that handles ticketing, there's a lot of tools that can do ticketing, but you'll start to notice with JSM where the difference is with these relationships to other information about who the user is. It's going to be the automation that we're going to look at, but also just the workflow perspective. So when something comes in, if it's just a question on benefits and it's a generic question, what's the process that we need to follow? This is easily defined, and now I can step through this process as the assigned agent. Like this is the case that I'm working on. So I'm going to start the process, and then once I start it, what's the next step? We can make fields required at a certain point, or we need to collect this information as part of that. And this is a very simple workflow. I'm starting it and I'm resolving it. I'm working on it. But typically you'll have a breakdown of different steps that are involved, and that can be specific to the type of request. So your onboarding process is going to look a lot different than, hey, I'm just answering a one-off question that a user has versus I'm changing beneficiary information. What do I need to do, or what does that process look like? So as the request is going through the life cycle, it's going through the workflow, items being updated, we can take advantage of automation. So each project in JSM, again, is configurable, but it's specific to that team. So for this team, when I want to look at automation, we'll pull up an example of a workflow that I want to create. Automation you can think about is if this, then that. And we can also use human language in order to help create a rule. So if I wanted to ask AI, hey, I'm looking to have the workflow do this or set this up, you can leverage that. But you can also see example templates here. So when a work item is created, use Rovo, that's Atlassian's AI agent, to summarize the work item, update the issue. And these are all just samples. So for HR, notify the assignee when a due date is approaching. Confidential cases should get a different security level. Here you can even see when a worker is added to Workday, create a work item. So I mentioned that as an example integration that's typical that we see. But this is where other tools also come into play with your workflow. So just to see that as a sample here, the automation has Workday connectors, and through Atlassian's marketplace, there's a bunch of connectors out there for the different systems that you would likely integrate with. So it's, hey, when this action takes place in Workday, get the information from Workday and then create a work item. So in this project, but all of these components that you can add, I mentioned that if this, then that. So based on the condition, here are some samples of other actions that can be taken as part of automation. being able to just send an email, of course, that's easy. If you're using Okta or other systems for single sign-on, let's automatically create the account there, or in Microsoft 365, help save IT some time too. But from the HR perspective, maybe you have to collect a e-signed offer letter. That's something that could be part of the process. So all of these actions can be taken. And then if you're using systems like Slack or Teams, post messages there of updates on the new hires process. All of that is part of automation and the ability to help save time, be more efficient, but really standardize your process. So now when we're onboarding users, we're following the same process every time. Automation is helping out where needed. And again, it's just something that is always consistent now. So that's a look at the typical requests in JSM for what HR might see. And, again, there's all different queues and types of request types that are configurable. I don't want to get too much into the configuration side of things, but just to show you how easy this is too. These are my request types. So that request for leave that I had, the employee onboarding request, or if, hey, I had a great experience with this other employee, I want to give kudos. All of these, just by clicking on the request type itself, I could just drag and drop the different fields and information I want to collect, manage the workflow from here. So this is where, again, with Flight Crew, the JSM, you're able to have someone in your organization manage a lot of this themselves, and that's not a problem. It's very easy to do, but we also step in and help with the best practices conversations, because there's always a lot you can do, but hey, how should I approach handling this request? Or when I'm doing onboarding, I'm in manufacturing, or I'm in healthcare, based on the industry, there's a lot of what we've seen over the last 12, 13 years by working with other companies that we can provide for, hey, you're not only just implementing a tool that's going to work well for handling your processes, but we can help you change your processes, improve them, just as part of leveraging this as a best practice framework. With that configuration and keeping in mind the standard processes that you have, the last piece that I want to highlight in terms of what the tool provides that will really help in terms of groups like human resources handling their processes and requests in the system is the relationships with different devices, items, any object, really. And what I mean by that is this leverages asset management in the back end, and that doesn't have to mean hardware. It doesn't have to mean an IT asset management. This is what's important and related to users that we can leverage in order to help streamline processes, or how do we go about solving the user's problem quicker, or just having the most information about who is this user who's asking this question. Cassie, what do we know about Cassie? So if we were to take a look at just some examples here, one is from a people perspective. So we can easily have who is in the organization, what information is important about them. This can pull from your HRIS system, absolutely configurable. We don't recommend pulling in social security numbers in here. You can, don't do it. But any information that's important to keep track of, you can, and it could be in the system. Now this could be leveraged as part of your processes when I'm onboarding a user, and back to whose department that is. So based on that and the role that they have, so for manufacturing, this is their access policy. So we have defined policies for a standard employee gets these systems. Who should get access to Salesforce? Who should get access to DocuSign? So it can be done from a system perspective, but again, this can also be done from a whatever the other soft items are that are involved with a new hire or an employee, what information do I need to know about them, their manager, because that's going to be leveraged for approvals. Yes, you can have approvals in JSM. So, hey, I'm requesting this change, or I have this question and it needs to go through an approval process. All easy to do. And that's handled with this schema that's behind the scenes. And the important piece and takeaway from this is really when we talk about the teamwork graph and the relationships between everyone and everything, this is a big piece to it, to be able to connect the pieces of those people that we have. If we're actually looking at a new hire perspective and, hey, this is a laptop that the user has, we know it's Jennifer. And if we click on Jennifer here, she's currently being onboarded. She's part of this team, email information. She's a full-time employee. This is all information you can get in one place. We can have also visibility into what requests has Jennifer submitted so far. All of that is going to be linked to her, located in the Boston office. This information starts to be very useful to not only HR, but also to other teams. Like we're doing an office move. So facilities needs to work on things, HR needs to work on things, all these tasks. It can leverage all of this data to be able to really make those moves or whatever the process is that much easier. So, Dave, if there are no questions in the queue, we'll take a look at, those are some of the capabilities of what JSM provides and what it can offer for HR teams. But, where does flight crew fit into the mix?
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So like Paul mentioned before, we've been doing service management for a long time. Really excited about the capabilities that JSM brings to the table. Specifically, when we start talking about a service management implementation or build out, this is something that we can do very quickly. And really where customers look to us, there is obviously the technical lens and our ability to actually build out integrations, configure the fields and the forms and whatnot. But the technical piece is actually probably the easiest piece of this whole process. And that's something that a lot of customers have done without any partner, right? A lot of folks have stood up stuff on their own. When it comes to flight crew, what we bring is the industry best practices and that overall experience lens to all of the workflows, all of the forms, anything that you want to do in the system. So again, very prescriptive approach. We do have that technical ability as well, but when it comes to what we do for our customers is having that experience across multiple different industries and being able to put that overall lens on all of the different pieces that make up the puzzle. So I'll talk about what that means to you specifically, right? So it all starts with our pre-sale solution team. This is just available to customers and prospects at no charge. Really, what we're in charge of there from a solution standpoint is overall it's business case alignment. There's a lot of other things that we do to help make sure that business case is aligned to any sort of technical effort, including road mapping, demos like the one you saw today, architecture diagrams, integration mapping. That's all stuff that we do as part of our pre-sales process in service of that business case alignment. In terms of the services that we do offer traditional implementations. Like I said before, a lot of customers like that because of our experience with experiences, as well as our project management capabilities when it comes to an enterprise rollout. The two other offerings, guidance and advisory and remote administration, these are a little bit more lightweight in terms of the commitment from our team, and it works more hand in hand with your team. So guidance and advisory, honestly, is the most popular of the two now. That really comes down to, at its simplest level, is a phone a friend for customers that have that technical capability and the bandwidth to configure and develop workflows on their own, and are really just looking for quick answers to technical sort of snags that they may have hit without having to crawl through documentation, or more overall best practices when it comes to how to configure an onboarding and offboarding workflow, for example. But at the end of the day, the hands-on keyboard stuff does remain with our clients, and it's great for folks that either, again, have that capability in-house or are looking to develop it in-house. And then remote admin, that's going to be the more traditional hands-on keyboard where we're going to help with enhancements and defect remediation. Really good for simple use cases that you just want us to take care of, or if you want to make sure that the management of the environment is healthy and you want to send it over to flight crew. But at the end of the day, again, this is all in service of our clients. It's not a one size fits all. Usually a lot of these statements of work are right sized to our clients and involve some components of all three of these different buckets. That being said, I want to talk about the methodology here. Well, I want Paul to talk about the methodology. We've talked a lot about what we can do, but I think the methodology is just as important. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and from an approach perspective, whenever we're working with Jira Service Management, whether that's through a full white glove build out for you, or whether that's that guidance and advisory perspective, we always want to follow best practices. So we are process first. The benefit of JSM, and I've said this already, is you get that framework of this is what service management should truly look like. There are very few systems out there today that actually are doing what JSM is in terms of that framework. A lot of tools are it's IT focused or it's customer focused, and it started in one place and tries to get somewhere else. JSM with that service graph connector is really providing that teamwork based look, and truly what service management is. So always looking at it for whether it be something like a framework like ITIL or a just a best practice framework in general, you're getting practical process transformation just by leveraging JSM. When we are approaching these engagements, we're also always looking at the actual governance and really proper phasing. And what that means is you get a lot with JSM and you can get a lot on day one. Based on the engagements that we're part of and the conversations that we have, we're always looking at, hey, is that a great idea and should it be done right away? Or is that something that's a good follow on in your phase 2, your phase 3 of how you're going to start leveraging JSM? That's really where we provide a lot of guidance, understanding the best practice approach and where it fits into your journey so that you're not having a project that turns into 6 months because you're trying to put too much in. JSM works really well for agile setups and implementation, and that's part of the journey, as well as visibility into honest, effective communication and keeping track of here's what's being worked on for the engagement in one place, and everyone has visibility into that. And then really what you get with an engagement, your flight crew team consists of a project manager, business process consultant, and a developer. And really, we're providing the solution design and working sessions. So when we consider what you're looking for the JSM to do, what are the considerations? And again, that's where a lot of the best practice conversations are taking place. But based on what should be configured and how it should be set up, being able to perform that development and configuration, but also considering the training and knowledge transfer. You know, we're not just a do the configuration type partner. We're really focused on the overall solution, and that includes your users. So the consideration of how to best train who's going to be who's on the HR team, going to be leveraging the system, what do they need to know, and then once the project is complete and you're leveraging JSM, providing hypercare for, hey, we're live, like we're not going anywhere, and we typically are also involved in continuous support for not only, hey, if you have questions, but what's the next phase look like? How can you grow and expand your use of JSM?
Yeah, so just to recap real quick, again, I hope we spent some time proving out that JSM is a great tool for managing cases and workflows, specifically as it comes to HR and how HR teams like to use tools. Quick to implement and easy to maintain and scale. These are all three key reasons why Flight Crew chose to focus entirely on JSM. So very excited about it. More than happy to answer any questions that might come up related to that after the call. And then finally, again, if you have any folks, I know everyone here is for HR, but if you have folks that are looking to learn a little bit more about ITSM best practices in JSM, we'll be doing that webinar next month on Thursday, August 14th. And that is it for today. Thank you very much. You can visit us at flightcrewconsulting.com. You can email us at hello@flightcrew.team. We'll also have a crew member reach out to you after the call and set up some time if there's a further session that's needed. But other than that, again, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, everyone.